As Russia obviously refuses to accept a ceasefire, will Trump pressure Moscow? Ukraine to send delegation to the United States this week to mineral deal discussions. AP reports on that. And a Blitz talk with Tinatin Avklidiani, research fellow in the EU Foreign Policy Unit at CEPS. Good afternoon. My name is Henry Keane and we are UATV English, an English-speaking Ukrainian state media in constant persuasion every day, trust me, to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. We'll just sit back, relax, get comfortable, let us speculate a bit, shall we? There will be no video on this, no background, no quotes, nothing. Just you and me for roughly 3 minutes or so. So, back then in ancient history, 3 weeks ago, Ukraine and the United States agreed to implement a full 30-day ceasefire. Russia declined to do so, issuing a list of demands instead. On April 4th, Russia murdered civilians in Ukraine in the city of Kryvyi Rih, targeting a children's playground with ballistic missiles and drones, killing 19, including 9 children. 75 were injured. Each day afterwards, at least one major Ukrainian city was struck by Russian missiles, resulting in more civilian deaths. Zelensky said recently, I quote him, "Killings in Ukraine every day and the world sees it." End of quote. The world sees it, all right, and talks about it. Also, Donald Tusk of Poland talks about it. French President Emmanuel Macron also joined the push for a ceasefire, global push. He said, I quote, "While Ukraine accepted President Trump's proposal for a complete and unconditional ceasefire for 30 days nearly a month ago, while we are working with all our partners on ways to secure peace, Russia continues the war with renewed intensity, showing no regard for civilians." End of quote, says Macron. I mean, many other EU politicians joined that push for ceasefire, but Russia wants war, no peace. I mean, it's like they did not know that. It came as a great surprise, as a revelation, out of the blue completely. Oh my God, Russia wants war, no peace. No! Since 2014, when it did occupy Crimea, I couldn't believe it, we still can't. Everyone who has eyes sees where Trump's negotiations with Vladimir Putin have led him and the rest of the world. 9 Ukrainian kids were murdered over the course of just the past 3 days. That's where. But everyone is joining the push for ceasefire. I mean, don't get me wrong. Trump is kind of upset. Well, let me quote him for you. "We're talking to Russia. We would like them to stop. I don't like the bombing. The bombing goes on, and every week thousands of young people are being killed." Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Oh, doesn't it feel sweet? He doesn't like the bombings. Sweet indeed, with a comforting feeling of compassion. I guess a small signal group would be nice, like a small group of people who don't like the bombings. Donald J. Trump and mothers and fathers of children murdered by Putin's missiles in Kryvyi Rih in that group. But Trump does not like it, and this is exactly why he will continue talking to Putin about it. Here is the hard truth in easy terms for you. America will continue talking to the Russian bomber while that Russian bomber continues to bomb Ukraine. I mean, sounds like a plan, right? It's like when you are talking to a thug that's trying to drown someone in their bathroom and you're like, I don't like that. Let's talk about it. And the thug is like, oh yeah, sure. I like talking, continuing strangling the victim. Well, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Einstein once said it, or maybe not him. But either way, clearly Russia again and again showed it had no intention to stop the killings whatsoever. On the contrary, Putin wants more blood. He needs to cement his monumental power over his Russian flock. And Trump and his insanity fits Putin's plan just fine. Kremlin negotiator Kirill Dmitriev announced on April 6 that new contacts between Russia and the United States could take place as early as next week already. In an interview with Russia's state-controlled TV channel One, Dmitriev expressed cautious optimism about the renewed diplomatic engagement and emphasized the importance of restoring bilateral ties. See, you Trump non-believers, all is good. Oh, come on. Let's all pray Ukraine just have enough children to get it to Trump's Putin ceasefire. Just keep trusting Trump. He has a plan and all is going to be good. Or not. Ukraine will send a delegation to Washington this week to begin talks on a new draft agreement that will grant the United States access to Ukraine's mineral resources. Economy Minister Yulia Sviridenko told the Associated Press. The Ukrainian delegation will consist of representatives from the Economy, Foreign Affairs, Justice and Finance Ministries. Sviridenko said that the new U.S. proposal still includes plans for a fund or sort of a joint investment between the two nations. The long-running negotiation, which has already strained ties between Kyiv and Washington, mainly because Washington's proposed earlier versions of a deal were, pure extortion and not a deal, follows an attempt to finalize a framework agreement earlier this year already. Well, those plans were disrupted after a heated, to put it mildly, Oval Office meeting between US President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance and President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky. There happened that, leaked draft for a disaster. The US was planning for Ukraine. It was a disaster, undermining Ukraine's control over its natural resources. That was the version of the plan, of the deal, including not just rare earth minerals, but also gas and oil, you name it. Ukraine's mineral wealth includes strategically important resources such as titanium, lithium, and uranium, and crucial for US industries like aerospace and nuclear power. However, the new draft agreement sent by the US after weeks of silence goes way beyond the original framework. It is still unclear why the US opted to bypass the previous framework agreement in favor of more comprehensive deal, which could require ratification by Ukrainian parliament. What we have now is a document that reflects the position of the United States Treasury legal team, Sviridenko says on the details of the draft, noting that it represents only one side's position at this stage, US. This is not a final version, it's not a joint position. Ukraine plans to assemble a technical team to define its red lines and core principles ahead of talks with the United States in Washington next week. The latest draft also includes more specifics on the proposed fund structure, though it remains unclear how much control Ukraine will retain. Analysts who review the leaked document suggest Kyiv's role in managing the fund would be minimal. Oh, come on. Say it already. None. There would be none. Ukraine hopes, of course, to address this issue during the negotiations, but I think it just doesn't happen. Why? Well, why would they? They do not have a right by law, but they have plenty of power to spit on that law and call that spit a new law. But, of course, it's just my opinion. We'll see. Tinatin Efkladiani, Research Fellow in the EU Foreign Policy at Central European Policy Studies. Hello. Hello. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Right, where do we start? I mean, tariffs. I guess you have crazy days in Brussels. I mean, the question is Trump's war against all odds, some say, and logic even. Do you personally believe he has a sort of a plan?
Well, EU definitely has a plan. Well, we've been kind of anticipating or expecting to see this plan implemented. And we thought here in Brussels as well that probably Brussels would come up or would follow up or would respond more promptly than it actually did, because we still don't have the responses. Last week we've seen the announcement of Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, and EU would follow up. promptly, but we still don't have the response. Currently, the EU leaders are meeting in Luxembourg, and we are awaiting what will be the EU's response. Now, very briefly, why this can be the case, why there is no prompt response, because I think there is a lot at stake when it comes to the geopolitical shifts, when it comes to the security threats and the risks that EU faces. And as we have it, United States is still very much engaged in, ensuring that Europe is secured when it comes to security and defense. So this is why EU's, response has been delayed, and we are still expecting it.
Well, I mean, all right, the prompt response, you need time, people have to think about it, but there's another part of the question that I just asked. Do you believe that Trump has a plan? Why? This is my question. I mean, what is the sort, is he going somewhere, or this is just a pure impulse?
I think it's a pure impulse because we knew that he was going to impose tariffs, right? This is not new.
Right.
We just didn't know how the tariffs would look like, and many still didn't expect that these tariffs would be so consequential and so high. On that, I think people have very different opinions. You will probably talk to different experts or different politicians that will have different views because, again, there is something we don't really have the evidence, and Trump is very much known with his unpredictability. However, what was here predictable, that there would be tariffs imposed. Also, what was predictable was that Trump would be unpredictable. So we kind of knew that this unpredictability was coming. And another thing is that he's also very much into, announcing policy measures that would be very good to then sell or even manipulate or create the narratives that would be, sold to his voters, to the general public. The way he introduced the package, it was, the day when the US becomes wealthier again, for instance, right? So this does not really correspond to the reality because what we are already seeing is that markets are plummeting really badly. Who is going to suffer? American businesses, American big businesses, right? And the industry. So the way he presents things are not actually in line with how we see the reality now. And this is just only the beginning. Right. So more unpredictable he will be, or more drastic he will be, more we will see the effects on markets, and the effects will not be pretty, and mostly not for the United States.
All right. Okay. I mean, I have a whole bunch of questions, but that will take hours to discuss. But this is introducing tariffs now, and he says Europe has to take care of itself more. He has to, and it's of course possible. He's right. 3 years in a row, maybe Europe has to step out and in a more concrete form and way and shape, but Europe has to grow muscle, to grow force, and do it fast now. But these tariffs is an act of international sabotage these days because Europe doesn't have time, doesn't have money, or have we? Am I wrong?
No, this is definitely not a good timing. This is why, we are hearing more and more that Europe is losing its ally, its Western ally, its democratic ally, which traditionally has been the United States. Now Europe has a lot of crisis going on at its borders, immediate borders. The EU, we have the war in Ukraine, which is the war in European continent. So this is definitely not the time for the trade wars. And of course, just to explain also for the audience, of course, businesses are losing, but these are the consumers who are eventually paying for all this. This is basically tax on trade. Who is paying for that? These are the taxes that will be eventually paid by the consumers. So nobody has a luxury, or nobody has the extra readiness for yet extra crisis, especially the voters, especially the consumers. This is definitely not a good moment, but I think Trump very much follows the things he has kind of pledged during his campaign, and this is a continuation of Trump's first presidency. So in that sense, that was very much expected that he would replicate the policies. What we're seeing now is he's replicating with extra strength and extra, knowledge how to push changes very smoothly. So he is leveraging all the experience he has got during his first presidency.
Well, you said nobody is gaining from that. Nobody wants another crisis. Well, I know someone in Russia who definitely benefits from all this mayhem.
Definitely, Russia definitely will, because this is weaker Europe, weaker West, weaker democratic states, and of course, all democratic states in fight with each other. Of course, always place in the hands of the autocratic states, because what we're witnessing,
Right.
this is the
Yeah.
division in today's world between democracies and autocracies,
Yeah.
and how they shape up. And of course, fight in the democratic bloc is, of course, very good for Russia or the other autocratic states, to then manipulate the game and take more control over it.
Right. Back to these tariffs. I'm just struggling to understand. Shall the European Union be retaliating harshly in return? And this is what is being discussed, right? What will be the next step? Or shall we take a moment and try to convince Donald J. Trump into something which is, I think, is absolutely impossible and naive to do? But I mean, retaliating in terms of pure economy, no psychology here. Shall we retaliate harshly or not?
Now, EU has done, I think, EU has put some efforts to convince Trump otherwise since he started his presidency. We had trade commissioner visited Washington before these tariff measures would be announced. We had Ursula von der Leyen, Commission president, making a number of speeches, basically, since this year, where he would, put forward that, EU and US should cooperate, what is at stake, and there's been a lot of closed door, dialogue that we don't even have access to. But so far, President Trump still went ahead, and today we have this announcement of the tariffs, which are quite consequential, quite large. So currently, I do not see what EU can do to convince President Trump otherwise. Maybe there are things, but as this is already announced, I would find it hard, President Trump, to take his word back at this point, although this can still happen, because as I said, Trump is very much unpredictable. And let's see also how the implementation of these tariffs and the trade measures will go ahead. So there may be still some room for, revisiting these announcements, these policies, and what effects they have. Now, I don't think President Trump will necessarily be listening to Brussels or the European Commission or the EU together as a union. What he's been doing so far, he has been listening several member states, and he's been listening some more than the others. So I don't think here Brussels to be, at the driving seat, but these are rather several EU member states, and so these things can still be revisited, and let's see also how these member states will take that forward. What Trump probably will be looking more is how voters and how American consumers or voters, his voters, are taking the consequences of it. Because if the consequences are drastic and they're very, very visible for the American economy, to the extent that also voters get that this is, reality is different to what Trump has been saying. If that is clear to the voters, maybe then Trump could revisit his policies. But other than that, I don't see that happening, in the near future.
Right. But so now it is not drastic enough, right? We're just in the middle of the whatever it is. If not catastrophe, then the tariff war.
We are seeing these results where it's very apparent that markets do not like unpredictability to that extent, and what we're seeing, markets plummeting. So businesses are really, really suffering now, right? We have to see more effects to the consumers so that it translates to the voters changing their opinion and their support. That will take a little bit more time. Although here, consumers who probably had some, savings invested into into some shares, some markets, they would already actually see the results. Although, this I don't have access to data, and I don't think we do have to see to what extent. But the other effects will be coming through surges in prices of the basic goods, those things that take a bit more time to show up. So then it translates to how voters take the implemented policies.
Right. Trump put aside, he's unpredictable. Excuse me. So if you, as a professional, would have a chance to turn Europe to wherever you would want it to turn now, in terms of tariff, what would be your advice for European leaders to do with the situation as it is? Well, just pure speculation, of course, but just imagine next 5 minutes, all you say will be implemented into life. What would you do?
Now, this is a very good question, but also a very tricky one
Oh,
because
yeah,
here I
it
stand
is.
as an economist, which does not like taxes on the trade because this is a trade war which benefits none of them, right? But I also here see it as a expert who works on the EU's foreign policy, which where things are more political. So politically, of course, the question at hand asks that the EU responds very swiftly and very decisively to show that EU has its power. EU has a very big single market. It's a big economic player, and it
It
can
is.
retaliate, but it can really hurt American economy. That's what EU should do, right? Politically, to show its power, to play on the global stage accordingly. But on the other hand, if I just wear my economist hat, because we will all suffer from this retaliation, right? So purely as an economist, I would probably advise not to have this large scale trade wars because consumers will pay, businesses will pay, nobody benefits from it. But given how things are, given how everything is politicized, I think here political decisions should prevail, and EU should show the unity, should show the strong position, but also you should consider where to start it from the retaliation, because there are sectors which
Right.
are more sensitive, there are sectors
Sure.
which are less
Sure.
sensitive, and there are sectors where EU could harm more to American economy than its own European economy. So my direct response would be go through the sectors where the harm could be higher for American economy than the European economy.
Right. Well, Tintin, amen to that. And you cleared the fog definitely with your expertise. It's amazing. Thank you so very much. We definitely have to do that again. Let's see what happens next week on the tariffs, and we do that little talk, Blitz, with us when you have time, of course. Right. Thank you so very much. Goodbye.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Have a good one. Goodbye. Well, it looks like that's it for tonight. My name is Enrique, and we are UATV English, an English-speaking Ukrainian state media in constant persuasion to deliver hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world and for you, directly from Ukraine. So, in return, we ask like, share, and comment. Your voice indeed matters, as it in turn helps Ukrainian voice to be heard globally. Please stay safe and hope to see you very soon. Goodbye.